How you doing, everybody? It's your boy Wardy, and as you can see, we're back at it talking about the Amazons. And folks, it's about time that we have this discussion because over the past week, there has been multiple reports that have come out connecting the New York Metropolitans to guys like Jordan Montgomery, Michael Lorenzen, among others, including a latest report over the past day. So let's break down and do a thorough deep dive on all these reports and why exactly David Stearns, our president of baseball operations for the New York Metropolitans, is still seeking pitching heading into the regular season, not just because of Kodai Senga being down with injury, our ace, but now here to a lesser degree, Max Kranick. So plenty to break down from these reports and ultimately get into the likelihood, unlikelihood of them landing said players. But before I do all that, make sure to smash a like and subscribe on, as it is the easiest and best way to support the channel. Thank you guys all so much in advance for doing that. And also thank you all so much for checking out and listening to our sponsor here at BetUS. For those that don't know BetUS has you covered as America's #1 sportsbook. They're safe, secure, and reliable, and they got you covered with all your sports betting needs. Whether it's NHL in season action, NBA in season action, MLB futures, which we're going to be doing some awesome segments regarding said futures on the channel the next week or so, and attending spring training, mind you, or you want to wait to do some picks with me as we're going to be doing unique WardyNYM parlays throughout the regular season, whatever it may be, as long as you're interested in sports betting and you make sure you're doing it the right way, make sure to check out BetUS today for all your sports betting needs, as you will get a 125% boost with not your first or second, but your first 3 deposits. That means if, say, you want to deposit $100, you automatically get $225 to work with. Times that by 3. There you go. Plenty to work with. Lots of fun. Again, make sure you're doing it safe, secure, and responsible the way that BetUS has you covered. Again, shout out to them once more for being a great sponsor on the channel. But now let's get back into this, everybody. So where do these reports first stem from? Well, let's get into initially what this stems from. So the latest reporting you see left or right comes from earlier over the past day from John Heyman of, yes, New York Post rather. Blake Snell leads Boris for awaiting MLB landing spots. And in that article, when discussing Jordan Montgomery, John Heyman did note that yes, the Mets have been internally discussing Jordan Montgomery as an option. Not saying they're the favorites or anything like that, but the Mets have been weighing Monty throughout a good portion of the offseason, and that continues now potentially to a higher magnitude than before after the recent injuries to Kodai Senga and to a lesser degree Max Kranick. Then we see here from an article that came out really over the past, midweek or so from Joel Sherman again that the Mets are monitoring, yes, the market of Jordan Montgomery, and while there may be other teams that could jump in to acquire Monty before the Mets based on price point, it doesn't mean that the Mets are completely out of it as they are involved there. And then if we go back over this past week, an article from The Athletic, if Ken Rosenthal, if I'm not mistaken, notes here that yes, after the Bellinger signing of a 3-year, $80-90 million deal, whatever it was with the Cubs, now you're going to see other guys in this Boris group willing to take these bridge contracts, 2-3-year deals very similar to Bellinger with opt-outs, that being the case with someone like Jordan Montgomery. Then to the right, we see from Will Salmon, who does a phenomenal job on the beat for the Mets through The Athletic, making it known that, yes, the Mets have been in contact with guys not only like Jordan Montgomery, but also Michael Lorenzen. So a lot of key takeaways, and I highly implore you all to check out those articles after watching this video in case you haven't already. But a couple of key things I want to get into, because if you guys follow along with all the latest Mets news and rumors, and you know that as soon as there's a sliver of optimism, Andy Martino is going to come in and make sure that he throws cold water on the thing. So don't get ahead of yourself, because shortly after we initially saw the Monty rumblings and connections, even though that we were fully aware that it's anything but a certainty to happen, he reiterated that basically the Mets thought process behind guys like Monty and Snell is no different now versus what it was when Kodai Senga was healthy and didn't have his injury. However, things have continued to change on that front, and in Will Salmon's article in particular over the past couple days, what really stood out to me was, a thorough evaluation. We all know this. Just because it makes sense why the Mets may not sign one of these guys doesn't mean that they still shouldn't be really going out of their way to try to make it happen. And in the case of Jordan Montgomery, the Mets may have found themselves in a unique situation now where Monty wants anything but a possibility really to happen after the Yamamoto sweepstakes, because we all thought he's for certain getting a 6-7 year deal, now becomes a much greater possibility if the Mets are willing to bite. And again, they've been toying internally what they want to do here on a potential Jordan Montgomery pursuit. And with the recent injury now to Max Kranick, to a lesser degree, for those that don't know Max Kranick was picked up this offseason off the waiver wire from the Pirates, a young fiery arm who was fantastic in his first spring outing, to masterful innings. And then, of course, unfortunately, he's dealing now with a hamstring strain, as you see from Anthony Como over the past day or so, which is going to have him out and starting the year on the IL, meaning that his chance at cracking the rotation, battling with Tyler McGill, Jose Buto, Joe Lucchesi, it isn't going to happen, at least to start out the year, unfortunately, for the diehard Mets fan, that being in Kranick. And then to the right here, we see his replacement, basically, for the time being, and John Duplantis here on a minor league contract. John hasn't pitched in the major leagues in a couple of years now. He has over 6 ERA in the majors, and the minors around a 3.3. So again, a AAA pitcher that you hope that you don't need to be relying on whatsoever with the Mets' current pitching depth. But as things currently stand, one more injury, and the Mets have a serious problem on their hands just like that. Tyler McGill right now is slotted in as your number 5. Then you have Joey Lucchesi and Jose Buto. And then you have Christian Scott and Mike Vassell, your rookies that you don't want to rush up. You know they're going to have an impact this season, but you don't know when or to what degree. You want to make sure you don't hurt their development. Point is that yes, the Mets have been very active on this front, and now after the recent injury to Kranick, a guy who looks like he had a lot of upside this spring heading into the season, while that still may be true throughout the calendar year, there's more uncertainty on the pitching front, and the Mets are very aware of that. And with the Boston Red Sox inability to somehow, some way commit to a contract with Jordan Montgomery yet, while Monty quite literally lives in Boston right now because of the girl he's with, I don't see how this isn't a match made in heaven for the Mets to get this done on a 2-3-year deal. Now, let's get into the cons of this potentially happening, because we all know this. The writing on the wall is 110% tax. That means what you're giving Monty is going to be doubled plus. So you're really looking at spending potentially 60 plus mil AAV, 50, 60 in that area per year, at least for this year, if you sign Monty. But are the Mets willing to eat such a high AAV, knowing that unlike Blake Snell, you do not need to deal with the qualifying offer ramifications? So you don't have to deal with the draft pick compensation that you would be losing if you say sign a Blake Snell, and how it would reorder your draft. All those kind of things would not come into play with Montgomery, because there is no qualifying offer attached to him. That's what makes him so fascinating of a pickup. And the only thing that's held the Mets back is their 110% tax. It isn't their uber depth in their rotation, because that's far from the truth. They have quality MLB depth that they haven't had in years prior to the same degree. But again, they're just an injury or so away from really running thin on starting pitching, when right now your entire rotation is uncertainty as to what you're getting for the first month and a half of the season. So why not at least make it somewhat of a certainty for a team that claims to be pushing so hard for playoffs? I can understand the not wanting to deal with the 110% tax. I understand that even from Steve Cohen's perspective about putting a hard line in the sand. Why do that in a year where we know that we're likely not going to be a World Series contender, but rather just pushing for postseason? And here's the thing. It's really difficult to push for postseason if you don't have a consistent rotation. And with the amount of uncertainty that this team currently has, a sure certainty would be a Jordan Montgomery, who just won a World Series with the Texas Rangers, who knows what it takes to win in New York during his time in the Bronx with the Yanks, where he was a consistent middle-of-the-rotation star for them, gives you 6-7 innings every time out there, solid, two earned runs or less. I mean, he's really, really solid for the most part, Monty, that we've seen. Torched it up there with the St. Louis Cardinals after being dealt in the Harrison Bader trade, who now is a Met. It would be funny if they both end up now in New York, this time with the Mets versus the Yankees, right? That is kind of bizarre to think about. But point is, though, if you bring in someone like Monty, you finally have a certainty in this rotation, something that you have very lack thereof at this point in time, and something that you're continue to have a lack thereof even when Senga returns, because you're not going to want him to pitch on an every fifth day basis. Bringing in Montgomery not only allows the ability to further stretch a six-man, but also takes some weight and pressure off the shoulders of Senga, who quite literally needs weight and pressure off of his shoulder right now, hence his capsule injury. So just further reasons that the Mets should absolutely do everything in their power to try to make this happen. I understand why they aren't the favorites. I understand why, even if Monty's price point lowers, that there could be other teams that bite before the Mets here. But still, when you look at the configuration of the rotation, it only makes sense for them to, at minimum, do their heavy due diligence and try to see if they can reach an affordable deal on a short-term price point. Or even Michael Lorenzen, again, to a lesser degree, Lorenzen, who split the past year, of course, with the Detroit Tigers and the Philadelphia Phillies, threw a no-hitter for the Phillies, had an up-and-down year, had an over 4 ERA, expected numbers weren't great. He doesn't strike out guys at a high clip, just over 6K per nine this past season. Walk rate isn't overwhelming either, but again, not terrible. He doesn't have great put-out pitches there with Michael Lorenzen. It's kind of, he's an oddball. He's an interesting one. He pitched more innings this past year than any time in his career, 150. This is the same Michael Lorenzen that was Shohei Ohtani before Shohei Ohtani, in the sense that he could play the outfield and he could hit some nukes for you back when pitchers were still batting, back especially in the 2018, 2019 time. He was still out there doing his thing. It was fun to watch. But Lorenzen is more of a similar arm to a Sean Manaea, in the sense that this is a guy that makes probably most sense as a stretch option, a guy that you don't want to be fully reliant as a starter in the rotation, but a guy that would make plenty sense there as a multi-inning reliever, a guy that can open games for you, say give you 4 or 5 innings. If he has some awesome starts, great, but a guy you can be very creative with because he's been utilized in both the rotation and the bullpen plenty in his career, right? He has been an ever-changing starter. Again, I don't love the mix of pitches that he currently has, just because, he struggles to strike guys out, and that's something I would like to see uptick, but there's a reason why, 1, he's still out there, and 2, he's absolutely still a better option for the Mets than, say, going and trying to rush a kid up and Scott or Vassell after going through the Lucchese's, the McGills, the etc. You can make the argument as well that Lorenzen potentially has better upside than Lucchese and potentially Buto. I don't know about McGill. McGill looked great yesterday. We saw that in spring, working with that American Spork, but point still stands. The Mets are looking to add pitching here. Jordan Montgomery, Michael Lorenzen are among the pitchers they've been connected to. They may also just acquire another arm in the waiver wire. Wouldn't shock me either, as they're trying to get creative in those ways too. Again, I'm not going to get my hopes up on anything flashy to happen, but it's still worthy of the discussion here because there's been a lot of linkage as of late, and it just further makes sense why, if you're David Stearns, you're at least considering these options, knowing where you currently stand. While there's no certainty Kodai Senga will be back at the date we hope him for, if us Mets fans know anything, well, it's that setbacks and injuries, go together like cheese and wine. They always happen. It is a certainty. So, even if Senga does return in time, you're still missing a month plus without him this season. And who knows how much that rotation can be impacted by that time. Who knows the type of impact it could have on the Mets' potential for cracking playoffs down the stretch, right? There's a lot of factors that go into play just by losing your ace for a month plus, if not longer, in this rotation. So David Stearns, again, has decisions to make. Us Mets fans hope to probably see some more moves. So whatever your thoughts are, drop them down below. How do you feel about the Mets' latest connection to not only Jordan Montgomery, Michael Lorenzen, among others? And what type of move would you like to see the Mets make, if at all? Please let me know. Again, stay tuned for consistent coverage and all things Mets all off season long. Thank you guys all so much for watching. And again, let's go Mets, baby. Peace out.